So today we're going to talk about the King, DK, DraftKings. We're going to have a look at this stock and see what's going on at the moment. If you are not aware, DraftKings is my biggest position, and it's a company that is focused in the sports betting in America, which is having insane growth because basically, as many of you guys know, sports betting hasn't been allowed in the US until a few years ago. It's now being allowed on the online platforms, and because of that, there's an absolute explosion in the space. The TAM is exploding, and I generally think this is the hottest growth sector that's being slept on at the moment in the stock market, whether it be DraftKings or other stocks like Entain, Flutter, for example. But I like DK because it's the pure online play that's just in America. I've got to say, there's other companies out here like Entain and Flutter, but obviously you have more of the mature markets like the UK and Europe that makes the growth look a little bit slower on that part of the platform. But I've got to say, if I was them sort of companies, I would be looking to kind of split off that FanDuel platform and get it on that US stock market, or Entain, split off that BetMGM and get that on the US stock market. But anyway, DraftKings is currently one of the pure plays for the online sports betting in the US, and I think it's a massive opportunity in the next few years. I think it's been massively slept on. Now, just before we get on to DK, I just want to point this really important thing out. You guys probably know, inflation day, or inflation day today, should I say. So we're coming off the back of July's data, which was actually really strong. So you can see here the consensus was 8.7. We came in at 8.5, so that was lower than what was expected. And obviously in July, one of the big things that we know of is that oil prices just went, and that obviously helped with inflation. It has kind of continued through August, so hopefully that does help with the inflation data through August. You can see here that the consensus is actually at 8.1. So to go from June from 9.1 to 8.5 to an expected 8.1% is actually, it's quite a big drop really. That's the key thing to be looking at. And I do really think that when we do get to October time, that's going to be really key, because that's actually when we have the comps where it goes up crazy high. So in October time, I'm actually really confident that we'll do fine on the inflation data. And if anything, when we get to this period of time, I'm actually starting to look at deflation in that period of time, but that's a subject for another day. But going into this here, 8.1 is the percentage that's expected. Obviously, it'd be really important to kind of come around that 8.1% mark. I think if it is, as long as it's below 8.5, I think we'll be okay, unless it's a bit towards the higher end. But yeah, even if it's like 8.2, I think we should be okay. But the key thing is if it was to kind of come in below that 7%, high 7% range, like 7.8, 7.9, I think that should be really positive for the market, and that will actually really show that inflation is starting to really come down now. So yeah, that's the key thing to be looking at today. Without doubt, it's probably going to end up moving the markets today. See DraftKings is currently up in pre-market once again, but obviously if this inflation data spooks the market, you'll see DK go down, especially growth stocks. Growth stocks are not suited or not favourable in an inflation environment, even though DK and Jason Robbins has come out multiple times and said, if we have a market where there's inflation, if we have a market where there's recession, our business still performs. And that was clear in the last earnings, where it was an absolute phenomenal earnings. So we'll see what happens anyway. That's the key thing to be looking out for today. But going on to DK, it's having a good time at the moment. It's back into $18. I still think it's cheap. I think it's one of the TAMs that's been absolutely slept on in the stock market at the moment. It's had a good 5 days. It's up 15%, and it's probably because of what we're going to talk about, the rally into the start of the NFL starting. The biggest weekend for this business is the start of the NFL season, and we're going to be looking at the data from DraftKings in the opening start. But yeah, really since that kind of May time, June time, the stock's been doing, if any of you guys got at $10, I'm absolutely jealous of you guys. It's up 77%. It's been on a good run recently, and I still think it's got plenty of upside from here. But if we get stuck onto the important bit, which is the data coming out from the first opening weekend of the NFL season, and how a lot of these companies did, a lot of these sports betting businesses did. So we got the information that GeoComply reported that geolocation volume and mobile betting states was 18.8 million. Regulated checks as well, another 630,000 as well. Now, if we do look onto the Friday's data as well, you can see that GeoComply also reported a geolocation volume was up 77% in comparison in the last year season opening game between the Bills and the Rams. So yeah, this is insane. To have geolocation volume up 77% is very, very good. Obviously, if that can hold and go throughout the year, that'd be absolutely amazing. But obviously, you got to realise that was the opening game of the season, and probably in that time you're going to have probably more people join on as the season kind of goes on, and potentially locations come online. For example, like Calais, if the Calais vote goes through in November. But obviously you've got hopefully a few more people joining online, but you're also going to have them few people that do kind of come on just because it's the excitement of the new weekend, and also because DraftKings were probably doing, an amazing offer, which we're actually going to look at in a second. But, DraftKings doing amazing offers of, join us and you get so-and-so in free bets, and people using them free bets, and maybe sometimes they'll drop off and maybe not use that again. But you'll be able to see here that obviously at the moment the data is very strong that people were joining and using a lot of sports betting platforms for the opening NFL weekend. Now there was also some other important news here. So it said that the outcomes of the NFL games also fell in favour of the sportsbook. According to Roth Capital Partners, analysts also saw that they believe the average hold rate was over 9%, and this is particularly given parlay users were less likely to hit. So one of the recent features that DraftKings has really been pushing out is parlay options. Now for you guys that are from the UK, you'll probably know this. This is kind of, so we've had sports betting recently come on the US in the last kind of 3-4 years. And one of the really recent expansion in the last 12 months is parlay options. Now that's kind of like the equivalent for what we have in the UK, which is like accumulators, where you kind of tie bets together and you get greater odds because you're taking more risk of multiple bets, and you'll get greater odds because you're taking more risk on, if you know what I'm trying to say there. And if we look at the recent earnings call for DraftKings, you'll see that they said that year-over-year comparisons for a couple of quarters now since we launched our same game parlays are starting to promoting it more heavily back in Q3 of last year. So that's when DraftKings started ramping up their parlay options in Q3. And these are growing a lot faster with DraftKings, so that's really good because that's actually something that DraftKings has really been pushing in the last few quarters. So that should be really positive for DraftKings. Also, you see here that because of the outcomes resulted as well, should help DraftKings with the hold as well, which is really important because we've seen quarters where DraftKings, and you can kind of say this about Gang as well, where DraftKings can be really affected on the hold, and the hold can be really important where it turns out to be a good quarter or it can be an excellent quarter. I think this kind of goes back to, I think the last time I saw this was potentially, I think it was maybe Q3 in 2021. DraftKings had an okay quarter, but it would have been better if there was a really positive hold there, which didn't happen. So the hold can be really important to the earning side of it and the revenue side of it. So looking at the moment, game week 1 was really strong in the NFL season for DraftKings because they seem to have quite a good hold. And one thing that Jason Robbins said in the last earnings is Q3 in particular can be very volatile from earnings point of view because you have your big start of your NFL season, but in Q3 we only get 3 weeks of games, and so in them 3 weeks of games you can have extreme hold rates. You can have an extreme hold rate where it's terrible and it doesn't work out for you and the earnings look disappointing, but you can have a Q3 where the hold's very good for you and you have a really strong earnings. So it can be very volatile because it's only a 3 game week period, whereas over like Q4 for example, you'll have a longer period of time where you'll have that kind of hold kind of hopefully level out and it's not as volatile. So obviously if we have a strong game week 1, hopefully game week 2 and game week 3 carry on, and we go into Q3 with a really good hold rate. And some of that it comes through when you look at the results. For example, the Steelers beating the Bengals, that was a little bit of an upset there. The tie between the Colts and the Texans, same again, a little bit of an upset there. People were expecting the Colts to do quite well in that game. The Giants and the Titans, the Giants beat the Titans, same again, a little bit of an upset there. That's coming from a Giants fan right here. Good result, but a little bit of an upset there. The Packers losing to the Vikings. Packers were quite a bit of a favourite going into this weekend. Same again, a little bit of an upset there. And even the Seahawks and the Broncos, same again, that was probably a little bit of an upset there. And when you look at the odds between the sportsbook here, like I said, we talked about the Packers there. They lost, and you can see these are the odds for the Super Bowl, and they were quite high up as one of the favourites. And if we go down here, you see the Broncos a little bit further down. They lost a little bit of a a little bit of an upset there. The Bengals, the Colts, as you can see here as well, same again, a little bit of an upset here. The Titans, who lost, who played the Giants, you can see a little bit further down on this kind of favourite list. So you can see then from a context of who was a bit higher than the other ones from a favourite point of view going into this weekend. From here, you can also see on this odds checker site some of the bonuses that were being offered. So you can see here that DraftKings is still offering a 1,050 bonus, which is a fair amount. You got Caesar actually topping them at the moment. You got FanDuel that are saying bet $5 and you get 150 in free bets. And you see all the other platforms here, kind of the main ones on top here. So you can see here there's still quite a few bonuses being offered into this weekend. I've got to say, I was also watching a lot of the coverage for the NFL this weekend, and it was very clear to see DraftKings also getting quite a big branding on that NFL now. One of the key drivers that we've seen from DraftKings is they basically came out and said that they are going to now advertise more nationally, because previously sports betting has only been allowed in like 38% of the states in America, and it's starting to push up to like 44% now. So because it's now being covered in nearly most of America, and in fact now that Kansas is on, it's going to be probably over 50%. Now that sports betting is being allowed in the majority of the US, they can now use national adverts rather than state adverts. National adverts are cheaper to use, cheaper to use, you get more coverage, and even the states that basically don't allow it and then will come on and allow it, obviously you've also had exposure there already. So it's also cheaper for DK saving money at the moment through a lot of this now being able to advertise nationally, and I thought that was quite clear on the weekend as well, which was really important to see. And also I'm just going to finish off here, which said, for investors, Engel noted that bonuses for new and existing are down materially this year, which the firm thinks indicates a less irrational promotional environment. So you can see here, we talked about this, I believe, on the last video about DraftKings, which I think was on Friday, and we've seen a massive down, even though on the opening weekend, you can see here, it's a little bit crazy still on some of the offers here to try and get people in. And when new state launches, they will be quite more aggressive with offering, bonuses to join. It is starting to get to a point of view where these sort of companies at the moment are now starting to focus on profitability a bit more and cutting it down. And we'll see this more and more through this year. And especially next year, I expect to see, a lot of the promotion really getting shrunk down, which is clear to see. So yeah, worth pointing that one out anyway. So yeah, overall that's the video on DraftKings. Looks like there's been a really good uptake in this kind of first weekend with people using it for the NFL and the start of the NFL, which is great because it's really the key driver for DraftKings. Also looks like so far we've been gifted with quite a good hold, which is really positive. We'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks, and then obviously we'll kind of get the Q3 earnings just after October time. We should expect, I would say, DraftKings earnings or the Q3 earnings probably around about the first or second week in November, and obviously that will more than likely be on a Friday because historically DraftKings does a report on a Friday. So I hope you enjoyed the video anyway, guys. If you could, hit the like button. If you're new, subscribe, and if you do want to see more content from me, I did drop this video here, which was the stock request on the Discord, which is where I spent, it's about a 24-minute video. I went into Neo, Shopify and Gang and just talking about them for a few minutes. So on the Discord we do that often. It's called the stock request, and on the Discord users are able to vote in for what stocks would like me to look at, and I talk about them for a few minutes, and that was the video on the weekend. So yeah, if you want to see more exclusive content, to join that, the Patreon, the link is in the description anyway. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it anyway, guys. Have a good day. Let's see what the inflation data is, and I'll see you tomorrow.